Now that's original.
I haven't been the kind of friend I should be. I let folks down, wasn't around when they needed me. And now it's too late to set things straight, some of them dead and gone. And I'm too ashamed to look some in the face, so I'll just leave them alone. As you go through life's doors, here's one thing you should remember. Little matters more than how you treat your brothers and sisters. Take it from one who's haunted by his failure. Those you offend, in the end, you will remember. Through the days and the nights of this busy life, we all rush headlong. God up above looks down in his love while we carry on. But there are dates that will not wait, appointments without doubt, when we shall die, be judged in the sky, and have to give an account. As you go through life's doors, your pride you should surrender. It will never matter more than how you treated your brothers and sisters. Take it from one who's haunted by his failure. I did offend, and now I must remember. Take it from me, I'm sorry for my failure. I did offend, and now I must remember. 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 Hope you enjoyed that original song. Before I tell you about when I wrote it and why I wrote it and all that good stuff, I want to do a quick plug for a new YouTube channel that I'm really excited about. And it's Mr. Doyle Dyke's daughter's channel, really her family's channel, one of his daughters. He has three daughters. This is Haley, and the name of the channel, I think, is Haley's Mandolin Ranch. I'll put a link in the description down below. But in her videos, she does a little message at the beginning. It could be something that she's been studying about, thinking about, you know, share some personal experiences. I've really enjoyed her talks. They've been a big blessing. And then usually at the end of the video, she and her daughter, Emmylou, and her husband, they sing beautiful 3-part harmony and make music there in their kitchen or their living room. So go over and check that out. I encourage you to subscribe. You won't regret it. And speaking of subscribing, you know, for years and years and years, I watched YouTube channels, a lot of the same YouTube channels, and I never subscribed to those channels. One reason was, as a principal, I got so many emails. I would just get 5 or 6 pages of emails every day, hundreds of emails. And I thought, well, the last thing I need is more emails. And I also thought, well, I don't need to subscribe, because whenever I just go to YouTube, kind of the landing page, and even as I'm watching other videos, if the channels that I really like, that I watch all the time, I'll see that they've got a new video. It'll just pop up and I'll just click on it. I don't need to subscribe, But once I retired and my email load, went down about 90%, I did go to just about every channel that I'd been watching for years and subscribed, because believe it or not, and first of all, let me say this: just because you subscribe, it does not mean you will get any emails or notifications. You have to not only subscribe, but then click a little bell icon if you want to be notified each time a new video goes up. If you just subscribe, that's it. You don't get any emails. And I was under the assumption that you would get an email every time there was an upload, but you don't. But what I was about to say is, in ways that none of us can really see, because there's the algorithm that's behind the scenes, and it determines who will see the thumbnail and be sort of invited to watch the video. So the more subscribers that a channel has, the more that algorithm will push that channel and try to spread that channel to other folks. So that's why I encourage you not only to go watch videos at Haley's channel with her family there, but also to subscribe to that channel. That helps the channel. Also, liking a video, clicking the little thumb, thumbs up, that helps drive a video and a channel and helps promote it. And, her video is really all about the Lord and about grace and salvation, and ways that we as Christians can better understand things and better go about our lives. So obviously, that's something that would be good to propagate and to try to spread. So please go over and subscribe to her channel. Now, a little bit about this song that I just sang. I'm not even sure what I would call it. I'll have to figure out a title. Maybe something like "I Haven't Been the Kind of Friend I Should Be," something like that, if there's not already a song of that title. I think I was wrong a while back. I said I only wrote 3 or 4 songs in adulthood. I keep thinking of songs that I did write as an adult. So it may be more like, 7 or 8 instead of 3 or 4. But this one I wrote when I was 23 years old. I remember it distinctly, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. As far as the melody, it's a very different style than any other song that I wrote. To me, it almost is a style, at least the verses, or it's a kind of a Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson style of song. And if you don't hear that, or you think, what are you talking about? Just go listen to a Good-Hearted Woman Loving a Good Timing Man, and you'll see that it has that same pattern as those verses. Course is a little different, but I didn't pattern it after that song. For this particular song, I thought, it's really just the lyrics that matter. I'm not going to try to come up with some super original melody with a lot of chord changes and nuances. I'm just going to make it a straightforward thing and just share the words, because that's what I was really more concerned about. A lot of times as a songwriter, you might take an event and use it in your song, but change it a little bit, and you might change it to try to make it more dramatic, or you might just have to change it to make it work. For example, I heard Merle Haggard say one time about the song Mama Tried. He said, that was really true. He said, I did turn 21 years old in prison, just like the song says. He said, now I wasn't doing life without parole. He was doing, I can't remember, something like 2 years or 17 months. And I believe it might have been for breaking and entering. It wasn't for murder. He wasn't doing life without parole. But he said, there was no way to get that to work in the song. So I just said, doing life without parole, which was more dramatic, kind of makes the song more powerful. So there's some things in this song that I maybe exaggerated a little bit like he did. And then there's some things that were more true to life. So part of the song says, I let folks down, wasn't around when they needed me. I don't think I've done that many times in my life. I think for the most part, hopefully, I've been a pretty good friend to my friends. I wrote that thought came to me from just a very specific situation. I had someone who helped me in PAP, not every day, but just here and there as I was building my house, this house that I'm sitting in here right now, which I definitely couldn't have built. It was PAP doing the building. Matt helped a lot also. I think Matt really helped a lot on the roof part with the rafters. But I could do whatever Pap showed me to do, told me to do. I could follow his instructions and do pretty good. But he was obviously the mastermind. He was a carpenter by trade for 2 different parts of his life. But there was another individual that would just kind of show up every now and then. I never asked him to, but he would just help us, building the house. Now, he mainly did that just because he really enjoyed it. He just loved kind of carpentry work. But it did occur to me that later he was building his house. I was very busy, and I never returned the favor. I never went. I'm not saying that he had a great need for me or that it made things difficult for him, but it's just a thought that I had, hey, that kind of slipped by me. I should have gone a few times at least and tried to help him when he was building his house. So that's where that thought comes from into the song, because the song is trying to inspire everybody, of course, to put others a little more ahead of themselves and to try to be the best friend that you can be. Now, the not look some, and I'm too ashamed to look some in the face, that's not about that situation. That's more about a kind of a situation that I can see looking back when I was in high school. I didn't see it at the time, but when I look back now, I'm a little embarrassed by it of how I had a kind of a relationship, and it wasn't that I mistreated someone during the relationship, but it was more kind of on the way this relationship maybe ended. And I won't go into a lot of detail, but it is something that when I look back, I'm kind of embarrassed by it and thought, I wish I could have been a little more mature and done a little better in that relationship. The main event that inspired this song is much more tragic, of course, than either one of those things. But when I was 23, I graduated from UNCA in May, and I got a job pretty quick. I worked June and July for a construction company called American South. And ironically, I worked building Martins Creek School, where I would later become a teacher, then later the assistant principal, and then eventually the principal for about 11 years, something like that. I was the principal there. But they were just building it right when I graduated from college with my bachelor's. And so I helped there and worked on the sidewalks and the door frames and the slabs and just various things, just whatever they told me to do. And I'll never forget, it was real hot, and I was working there one day. I can remember what classroom I was in. The window frames were up, but there was no glass. And I saw my sister, Tipper, come walking through the parking lot. And this is in the middle of the day. And I thought, what is she doing here? This may not be good. And so she came and she told me that a friend of mine that I'd gone to school with, my same age, had taken his life the night before. And of course that hit me pretty hard. And he was not my best friend, but he was kind of in my circle of friends, and I had grown up with him all through elementary and middle school. He had dropped out in the 9th or 10th grade, but we did go to high school a little while before he dropped out together, and we rode the bus together before I got my driver's permit. And the reason that so that's the line in the song that says, now it's too late to set things straight, some of them dead and gone. That's really a reference to him. Now, we didn't have, thank the Lord, we didn't have any big falling out or conflict or anything before he took his life. But the big regret that I have, he was living by himself in a trailer, and I just graduated from college, so I did have a little free time, and I didn't even know he was living where he was living, fairly close to my house. And my best friend told me and said, let's go by there and go see him. He said, my close friend had already been by to see him once, and and said that he was always asking him, come by. I think maybe even my best buddy, maybe even drove by and saw him up on his porch or something. Anyway, so I said, yeah. So I went over there and saw him a couple of times with my best friend, and I went over there and saw him a couple of times by myself. And he had an old beat up guitar that he kept there in the trailer. I don't think he could play it much. He could maybe play, he was really into rock music. I remember he loved Bon Jovi, Van Halen, stuff like that. He could play a few things. And so he would, every time I'd go over there, he would want me to get that guitar. And so I'd just get the guitar and just pick and sing whatever I could think of. One of the times that I went over there was he and his dad. I remember they wanted me to sing Rank Stranger, an old Stanley Brothers song, so I sang that. Just different things. I remember I sang a country gentleman song for him. So anyway, after I had made a few visits over there, I can't remember exactly how because I had no cell phone, but somehow a time or two he got word to me that he wanted me to come back over there. And I think somebody even told me, boy, Richard, I'll just go ahead and say his name. Richard sure loved when you came over and played the guitar and sang. And I was like, really? Wow. I mean, I just kind of thought we were goofing off. I didn't think that he was enjoying it that much. So I did kind of say to myself, and maybe even him, yeah, I've got to get back over there. And I was still planning to go back by there, when I could on a weekend or something. And then someone told me he broke his probation. So he was out on probation. I don't remember what he had been convicted of. I think it was probably something drug related. And so I was like, oh man, And I had no experience with probation and how probation worked. So when somebody told me that he had broken his probation, which I think the way he broke it, he didn't go out and hurt anybody, do anything, but I think he maybe failed a drug test. Because while he was on probation, he was not supposed to do any drinking or any kind of drugs, and he failed his drug test. So I had no experience with probation and how it worked. And when someone told me he broke his probation, I thought that meant he was sent back to prison. What I didn't know was, and I don't quite understand this, maybe it's not always this way, but in his case, he got to serve out the rest of his probation or parole or whatever you want to call it. The amount of time that it was originally supposed to last, he got to serve that out and then was going to have to go back to prison. I didn't know that. If I had known that, I would have gone to see him. So I can't beat myself up too bad because it was an honest mistake. I thought he was already sent back. Had I known that he wasn't sent back, I would have gone to see him. And I don't think it was just for this reason, but his employer, who knew him pretty well, worked with him. He didn't know him maybe as well as I knew him, but worked with him, his employer believed that he committed suicide because he did not want to go back to prison. And that when he was in there the first time, he'd seen some very disturbing things. And he had kind of vowed that he would never go back. And so that's why he had taken his life, at least partly. Had I known that his probation wasn't over, I firmly believe I would have made time. I would have gone to see him, and I would have encouraged him and said, hey, I know that's got to be terrible, absolutely terrible, a nightmare to go back to prison, but you're only 23 years old. If you go back to prison, even if you're in there for 2 years, even if you're in there for 5 years, God forbid, you still may have 60 years of your life left. But I never I'm not that great at giving, pep talks. Usually I just kind of point out things like that and just think about it like this, think about it logically. Maybe that would have helped, maybe it would not have, but it is a regret that I have that I didn't have that opportunity. On the bright side concerning him, when we went to the funeral, and if I remember right, I was a pallbearer, my best friend was a pallbearer, and other buddies that we had gone to school with were pallbearers. And I was sitting in the pew, and Hoyt Brown, who is a great preacher, he's been a preacher here for, I don't know, 50 years probably. He was the preacher who was preaching when I accepted Christ. He preached Richard's funeral, and he read the part about, in the Bible about how man's works will be burned up. You know, if you're engaging in bad works, but you are in Christ and you've accepted Christ, your works will be burned up and destroyed. You know, you will probably reap the negative consequences of it here in this life, but your soul will not be burned up. And I know different people have different views and beliefs about suicide. I can't find anything in the Bible that says to me that there's anything automatic about taking your own life. Definitely it's very, very wrong to take your life, horribly wrong, but I don't believe that the Bible says just because you take your life that you're doomed in the next life, you know, that you're going to die that second death. And Hoyt, when he was preaching, said, you know, it doesn't work that way. He made me feel so much better. But the real icing on the cake that Hoyt shared when he was preaching, he said that 2 weeks prior to that, Richard had come to the church there where Hoyt preaches. They were given an altar call. He came down the aisle. He accepted the Lord, and he was saved. And the part that made me, that would have been good enough right there, but the part that really just kind of drove it home for me and made me think, you're exactly right, Hoyt. Hoyt said, if you know Richard, he didn't give a flip. Hoyt probably didn't say flip. He probably said he didn't care about what I thought or anybody in this church thought. He didn't care what we thought. So when he came down there, it had to be because it's what he genuinely believed and wanted to do. So, you know, he came down here with his leather jacket on and his tattoos all over him. He rode up here on his Harley, rode off on his Harley. And so it was not done for any kind of public show. And when Hoyt said that, I immediately relaxed and immediately felt better. And I knew that although I didn't get to have that last visit with Richard the way I would have liked to have had, I will have a visit with Richard one day. So, didn't mean to get into anything all that serious, but a lot of folks have really commented they love hearing the background of a song just as much as they love hearing the song in the original song series. So those are the three things that mainly inspired that song. And I do think it's good from time to time to try to motivate yourself, to put others first, think about others more, be a better friend, be a better family member. And of course, when I say brothers and sisters in the chorus, just like when Jesus talked about your neighbor, he didn't just mean the person living beside you. He meant really everybody. So we're all brothers and sisters. Tipper and Steve, are my earthly brothers and sisters, but we're all brothers and sisters in this life. So it's about trying to help everybody, not just your immediate family. One other thing I was going to say about the song, and then I'll wrap this one up. Let's see, brothers and the part about pride. So when I went to do my master's, which was at Western Carolina, it was not at University of North Carolina at Asheville. I had a phenomenal. I had all my professors were excellent. But the most impactful professor that I had, his name was Dr. Casey Hurley, and he wrote a book called The 6 Virtues of Education. And I won't go into all of them, and they kind of come in pairs, and one sort of triggers the other one and causes the other one to go into action. And in his book, he's saying that's what we should really stress in education is virtues, not virtue signaling, which is really popular now, which is really a bunch of hollow baloney, but true virtues. What better way to be really well educated than to be a virtuous person. And the most important of the 6 virtues, and what Dr. Hurley taught, I believe, was humility, being an humble person. And the word pride, sometimes we use it in a positive sense, like take pride in your work. But we really probably shouldn't say it that way. That really just means do your best, right? Do high quality work. Want to do work that you don't have to be ashamed of because it's done right, it's done well. If it's worth doing, as they say, it's worth doing it right. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean being prideful. It's really foolish. The true meaning of pride, it's really foolish to ever be prideful. Take Doyle Dykes, for example. That man does things on a guitar that are absolutely amazing. But as good as he is, it would be foolish for Doyle, and he does not do this, it would be foolish for Doyle to be prideful, because God allowed him to do that. Those things are a gift from God that he developed. Yes, he developed, but he couldn't do it without the gift. Take someone who's extremely handsome, like a man that's extremely handsome, or a lady that's extremely beautiful. That is a gift from God. Take someone who's highly intelligent. Some people have like 200 IQs. I can't strain and make myself be smart or smarter. That's a gift. That's a blessing. So in the song, what I'm trying to say there is, if we're not careful, we can get a little caught up in trying to just be right. But at the end of the day, at the end of life, that won't matter. Whatever it is that we want to kind of be prideful about, it's not going to amount to a hill of beans. But how we treat other people, that is a legacy. That is sowing a seed that's going to go on, that's going to be fruitful. But it's easy to forget that, because say you're having kind of a conflict or a disagreement or something, some sort of thing with another person or another group of people, and you're right, and you just kind of want to, I'm right, you can let go of some of that if you'll let the Lord lead you, and you'll think about what He taught, what Christ taught. If you'll let go a little of that, you can find a way to have them, whoever it is that you're having the conflict or the argument with, you can find a way through the Lord to let them come out the other side of it feeling good, feeling respectful, rather than just like, hey, I'm right, I know I'm right, and the heck with you. And you'd be surprised if you approach things humbly, how much more effective that can be. And sometimes those people can come back and you didn't have to tell them you were right. They come back and they tell you that you were right. And that would have never happened if you had just clung to that pride. So that was my thought in that part of the song about letting go of pride, because it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter at all one day. Now, I don't believe... the chorus talks about, in the end you will remember. I don't believe that, and this would, I'd have to really get into a much longer video to explain why, but I am saying this based on the Bible. I don't believe that for a saved person that there's going to be a judgment where the Lord recounts every single thing that you've done wrong, because of what Christ did on the cross. On the cross, the Lord said that God said, I will remember your sins no more. They'll be cast as far as the east is from the west. I've put them away. I've forgotten them. My Uncle Ray, who was a preacher, said that Jesus' blood didn't just cover up our sins and hide them. It erased them. They're gone. My righteousness is in His righteousness. So when I said in the song that, if you offend somebody, in the end you will remember, I'm really talking about in this life, when you near the end of this life. Now, some people die young and suddenly in an instant, and they don't have time to remember anything or reflect back over anything. But for those of us that live into, for those who live into old age, just like I said, that one thing that I think back to in high school that I'm embarrassed by. I'm embarrassed by a lot of things when I think back to high school, but the one kind of situation or relationship that was part of the motivation for writing this song, I already remember that. But if you offend people and you kind of put yourself first, eventually you might be a little haunted by that, and you may or may not get a chance to apologize, just like the song is saying. So that's probably more than you ever wanted to know about this song. I hope you enjoyed this song. Thanks for watching, and tune in next Tuesday, and we'll have an old-timey song for you on Old Timey Tuesday.